Mindmaze are a power metal band formed in America. It consists of a female lead vocalist as well as her younger brother, who is the lead guitarist. So the lead female vocalist, she's called Sarah, and her brother formed the band. Now I've got a fair bit of information from looking at interviews of this band. So originally neither of these two were really that into metal. It only took them until they were probably around 12 or something, because they said kind of high school. Before that, Sarah, vocalist, was into country music, so that was kind of her thing. She knew how to play flute, clarinet, kind of things like that. So she knew a few of the instruments, and then she got into metal in high school. She was heavily into Iron Maiden as well as Queensryche and things. And then her younger brother kind of got into the same thing. Now, even though her younger brother is the lead guitarist, actually it was Sarah who picked up the guitar first. But seeing that guitar is a very difficult thing to learn, and she knows, a handful of chords and stuff, she gave up on it because it was just too hard. She also emphasised, just because it's hard doesn't mean if anything's hard I always give up on things. It's just the guitar, it takes so much time. So the younger brother took the guitar, and then he got used to it, and Sarah obviously is a vocalist. She's not a soprano, one of the really high singers, which she's also said that people have criticised her even on this album for her voice being not high enough. Because in metal music, the majority of the vocalists, if you look at Evanescence, Nightwish, all of the three vocalists of Nightwish, Amaranthi, like most singers, even in Solaris, they all are basically sopranos, and that's not a bad thing. It is still it's good voices, and I'm not criticising that sopranos suck and we need less of them. It's just there's an abundance of them, so it's nice that Sarah is, there's a word for it, but I forgot it. Basically her voice is deeper and in a lower register than these other singers. And apparently critics have criticised Sarah for this, saying her voice isn't high enough. Her voice doesn't have them really high, screams that females do, where it's like, ha, just really high. Sarah's voice isn't really good at it. She can do it, it's just a lot more difficult for her, because her vocal cords are shaped in a certain way to make her voice suit the deep element. So to make her voice go into a high thing, she has to really stretch her vocal cords and just make it do something which isn't best suited for it. So it kind of can be quite painful for her to really do that, because it's not where her vocal cords are really situated. But she says in this album she's gone full out. She's tried to do a bit of everything. So when she finished the album, she could look back on it and go, I did as much as I could, I've done a variety of things. And that's how you should approach an album. You should try and go out there and do as much as you can. So I commend her for that. It's good that I actually appreciate that her voice is different and not just sopranos, because I don't want the same regurgitation over and over again, which is basically exactly what she said. Why do you want the same thing over and over again? Shouldn't you want different? And I'm on board with her. I think these critics are morons, just wanting her to just have the exact same vocal style and sound as everyone else. I want a different sound. I want a different realm of vocals. Sarah is a whole different kind of style and tone of vocals, so it's nice just to get that. And then in this album, as she says, she does other stuff than just in her realm. She tries to go into different realms, because she's a vocalist. She's trying to learn. She tries to do more. And if you want to be a good vocalist, you need range, and that's what she's tried. I really, really commend her for this. Now, obviously, because the guitarist and everything has started late in the game compared to other guitarists like Steve Vai, who started when goodness knows he was 6 or 8. You may think, he started late and maybe a little bad and everything. They weren't really into metal, so maybe they're not that great. Well, this is where we get into it. So this album is power metal. It's not a typical power metal. It's not about, dragons and all this. The lyrics are basically about mostly kind of self-esteem, like having a negative mindset and overcoming it type of things. So it's basically about your personal mind and your mindset. So it's definitely not the typical power metal type of lyrics. The music is done by the guitarist, the vocals is done by the vocalist. That's the way it should be. Not all bands actually do this, because some people will be like, well, duh, but not necessarily. Some bands, the guitarist just does everything, or the vocalist does everything, or they all mix it together. But no, the vocalist works on the vocal melodies and the lyrics, and the guitarist works with the guitar stuff and everything else. The guitarist has also done the majority of the drums on this album as well, so he can do that, which is pretty decent. And yeah, the album is just over an hour, and there is a fair few instrumental tracks. So the first track is an instrumental, which is like 4 minutes. Some people may get annoyed at that, but I'll come back to that. Then it goes into an actual track. Then after that it's another instrumental, which is piano, which is a track within this void. Then you get a few other tracks of actual songs. Then you get Sanity's Collapse. Again is just something that gets you into the next track. And then another instrumental. There's loads of instrumentals on this album, like tons of them. And people may think, oh, this is just padding, it's just useless, like just do an actual song, or just have a song have the introduction. I'm going to get into all of this. I'm basically just saying there is a lot of instrumentals. So the first track, Reverie, as I said, is an instrumental, and it's like 4 bloody minutes. But the fact is, it is the band playing. It is not just computer generated, just random sounds. And it doesn't just kind of end, it does go into Fight the Future, the actual track to follow. So it doesn't just stop, then you get the track. So this track can work. It does have a slight pause, so if you don't want to listen to this, you can just jump into Fight the Future if you so please. But the thing about Reverie, which is good, is it is the band. And technically it is kind of like Leeds. The lead guitarist, he's the only guitarist, I'm just going to call him the guitarist from here on out to try and remember there is only one. He does leads. Now, it's not exactly like an instrumental guitar player. It's not like that. There are riffs in there, but there are also leads throughout. So it can start with, it starts acoustic, which is quite nice. Then it goes into leads, then it goes into riffs, then it goes into another lead, then it goes into riffs, then it goes into another lead, then riffs, then lead, then riffs, then leads. The riffs are very good, they're very old school sounds, something like you would get out of Maiden and Queensryche, because these people are very influenced by the old metal gods of, you know, the 80s. So a lot of riffs do kind of sound a fair bit Maiden, Queensryche, kind of, you know, Dio, RZ style of things. And that's where they are. But as far as the leads go, they're very, very technical. They're really, really good, which is why, even though it's like 4 minutes, it's not really that bad a track to get into. Like, you may want to skip over it because you want an actual song consisting of a singer and having its, you know, typical sections, and you may not be interested in this. But for me, it has the leads. I like seeing the musicianship. You've got the bass in there, you've got the guitar doing a multitude of leads, and then some decent riffs. And it does go sort of into Fight the Future, even though there is a slight kind of... It just kind of holds, and then the sound fizzles out slightly, but before it cuts off, it goes into Fight the Future. So it does kind of go into it, but not, you know, very easily, so you can just go in without Reverie. Now, as I say, it's 4 minutes. It's probably a bit long. I think it could have been done being a little shorter. Just because, as I said, there is a lot of riffs in here and a lot of leads, but because it keeps stopping to go into all these different riffs, you kind of think it does seem you're padding this out. So maybe what you should have done is just made it, I don't know, just in the 3 minutes, if not 2 minutes, and just try and really hone it in and just really make it quite special. Have all the leads come together and just really focus it instead of have it so open. Because you go through it and it's like the leads are great, they're really technical, this guitar player is insane. And you enjoy it, but 4 minutes, and then you have to keep pausing for just riffs. And as I say, it's not like listening to Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, or Buckethead or anything like that. It's got leads, but it's like a song, just to take the singer away, but it does have a lot of leads in there to keep it going. So it's not like a typical song, it's got a bit more lead in there, but it's not to the point of it being, you know, in the realm of Steve Vai. So I think it is a bit long, it does kind of start dragging, but you do get through it, and once it comes to an end, you can sit back and go, yeah, it's kind of dragged, but I still enjoy it. I still appreciate what it does, because I have really seen the guitarist really come into his own before this first track even begins. I hear the band, the bassist, I can hear that he is fast and articulate and technical. The lead guitarist, I've seen him now do a fair variety of leads, because he keeps pausing and goes into a different lead. So there's a lot of technical stuff, soaring stuff. And then the riffs, you get a grasp of what type of riffs he does. It's very old school driven. So it really gives you an appreciation of the musicianship before the vocalist comes in. So some people may want to just go fight the future. That's perfectly understandable. I can understand that. Some people will really appreciate the lead, like I do. Some people may not even think it gets a little tedious as the length keeps going. Some people will appreciate the whole thing and feel like it's over in a matter of seconds because they really enjoy it, and they may not notice the length. For me, I do. So I think it depends on personal preference. Some people will find it too long, some people won't find it interesting, and then other people will really appreciate it. It depends on who you are, if you appreciate musicianship or not. If you appreciate musicianship, I think this will work. So going into the actual track, I'm going to try and make this a shorter review, by the way. So going into the first track, the vocalist Sarah, you do appreciate her voice. It is not very high. She's very influenced by Bruce Dickinson and, as I say, Jeff Tate of Queensryche. So that is where her influence is, and she tries to sing like that. And as I say, the riffs are very old school, which is somewhat a problem for this band because of these things. The band try and say that they want to do something different and unique, and they don't want to be the same regurgitated band as we get a lot of. But the issue I find is that it's old school. It's got a modern flair to it. Like, don't get me wrong, it's got very heavy sound to it and very high production, unlike, you know, the old style music, which is a lot kind of brighter and got a lot more crunch to it. Instead of this really modern, very tight production quality, which this band Mindmaze has got in spades. But as I say, the riff style is very kind of old school, made in Queensryche. You do get your variety of, you know, more modern sounding riffs, but it's definitely about 80% old school, 20% something a bit more modern. The vocalist taking inspiration from, you know, Bruce Dickinson, Jeff Tate and things. Obviously, it's heard before, but you can't really deny the fact that if you're going to get inspiration from somewhere, where else is there better? Bruce Dickinson is the top of the game of the metal vocalist, so is Jeff Tate. He's no Bruce Dickinson, some people will prefer him. But they're two of the like best vocalists, and she's influenced by other things like Dream Theater and Russell Allen, or whatever his name is, from Symphony X. So she definitely does appreciate vocalists, and really, really good ones. She's not influenced by all these, you know, screamer bands. She's not into that. She's really into really good singers and versatile vocalists, and she knows her stuff. She's gone out and then has actually done work in baseball fields where she sings the national anthem. Because if she gets it wrong, she's going to get attacked for it, because people take the national anthem very seriously in America. So she does that because it's something different for her voice, and she has to nail it. So she tries, and it shows a good vocalist. So her voice is different, as I say, from other females, because she's not the soprano, she's something a bit deeper. So there's a lot more warmth to her voice and a bit more bass to it. But she still, you know, can do the really high things. It's not super high, obviously, because that's not really where her voice sits. But in her range, she then pushes it into, you know, the high, you know, kind of, you know, metal yells that you really get. It's just not high spectrum, it's in her spectrum kind of high. So, you know, you get your variety, and then she holds her notes and things. And when you get to the solo in this track, it's quite difficult, because I don't know if it's a bloody bass solo that starts, or it's a guitar. Because it sounds very bassy, but I don't know if it's just a guitarist kind of playing at the top of the neck, because it doesn't sound right. So it could be bass, then go guitar. If it is bass, then obviously it shows how good the bassist is, and then the guitarist, again, it's very technical. In this Void, the next track, it's piano based, and then it goes immediately into Drown Me. I like that. The piano is a great instrument, it shows something new, and then going into Drown Me, I prefer this from the vocalist, because I think the vocal melody is just so much better, and it works with the guitars. The melody is just so much better, it flows nicer. I think it's a lot more catchy, the song Drown Me. There's 2 guitar solos in this, the first one fast and technical, the second one nearer the end of the track. It's a bit more kind of open but still technical. And then you've got Sign of Life, which adds a bit more melody in the kind of verse, and then it picks up into a bit more aggression. You get a bass solo and a guitar solo, both of them technical. Then you got Abandon, which has the backing vocalist, so you got the guitarist and the bass player giving a bit of, you know, just the kind of gang vocals. Sanity's Collapse is just an instrumental which is brutally quick. It is so fast. Then you get One More Moment, which is more of a melody, and then the solo for that is definitely more melodic. This guitarist is quite technical. He's not really the most melodic guitarist out there. So One More Moment is basically where he tries and does that. So it's a lot more kind of holds, and it's not really showing off at all. It's a bit short, and I would like more variety from him, because I don't think he's really that well diverse into this, which is why it seems that he struggles and he does more of the shred. I think he's not really connected to this kind of way of, you know, doing solos. But it is nice for a change. Twisted Dream, the song starts quiet, it turns the volume up, and then there is an effect on the vocals, and there's just a few other kind of different things in here. And then you've got True Reflection, it's still a heavy song. You've got Shattered Self, Release, The Path to Perseverance. The last track of the album is the longest track there is. It's like 11 minutes or something, and is the epic, but it doesn't come across as an epic because of what the band obviously do. As I say, there's a lot of instrumental breaks in this album that then go into the following track. So basically it is one track, even though it's 2, because it just flows in. It's like a massive opening for a track. So all these tracks feel like they're longer than they actually are, because you stick the previous instrumental track in with it, and then that obviously will lengthen that track. The Path to Perseverance being 11 minutes, it's like, well, it doesn't feel any longer because of what the band has done. And the song seems like it's cut into different pieces, because it's not an 11-minute song that constantly keeps flowing. It keeps having these like sort of pauses where the tone does a complete 180 shift, and it's like, that's good. It's good that the song keeps adapting and shifting, but it's not a natural shift. It's like a really forced switch. So it's like they flip a switch and it just completely turns it into something completely different. It's not natural. So it's like, oh, this sounds like it could be one of these previous tracks. You've got your first part, and now comes the next chapter, or now comes the next song, but it's continuing from the previous track. And that's the way it seems. So it doesn't really work as the big epic for that. And then some of the previous tracks don't even have an instrumental, it's just a track that just flows into another track again. And that is basically the album. So to sum up, you get a lot of instrumental breaks, but they all play into the other tracks, so it makes the tracks bigger overall. As I say, Reverie, you get a lot of leads, and then in other tracks, Sanity's Collapse, you get a really fast guitar playing. In this Void, you get piano. So it gives you a lot of, you know, great musicianship. These instrumental tracks. And then as far as the solos, the guitarist is very, very technical. He does really technical solos. They have a lot of length to them. Some have shorter lengths and you may feel that it needs more. His only fault is basically, as I said previously, he's not that melodic. He needs to have more melody. The only song really where he does the melody is One More Moment. That's as melodic as he really gets. Other than that, he always puts technicality into it. The bass player is actually really good. You can actually hear him kind of stand out, which is quite difficult in metal music because the bass player usually is quite hidden. But in this band, you can hear him doing his own thing, and it's really technical what he's playing. So you hear the bass player doing his own thing, and it's really technical and it's really fast. So you can appreciate bass. If you're into bass, you can really appreciate it in this band, because he doesn't just keep the rhythm with the guitar. He is doing his own thing all the time, near enough. And then, as I said, I think he has a few solos to himself, like Fight the Future. I think he may have a solo. Sign of Life, he definitely has a solo in that, and maybe even another one. Twisted Dreams, the solo of that actually starts acoustic and then goes into the guitar solo. The vocalist, as I say, she's really knows what she's doing. She knows all the terms for vocals, she knows all the notes and everything. She takes massive influence from the best metal singers there are. She's different to the other female singers, which makes her a bit more unique. And as I said, when she went into this album, she wanted to do as much as she can, so she could look back and go, I did what I could, I've done as much as I can. Therefore, that clearly means you do get variety from the vocalist as well. So, it's over an hour, you get a lot of guitar stuff, because in the instrumental stuff you get guitar stuff, then in the actual songs you get guitar stuff. There is a fuck ton of guitar technicality going on. So much technical prowess, so many leads, and then in between the songs there is leads coming out of this bloody guy. You got the piano, you got him doing acoustic, not as much as I'd like. It's basically the first track and then that beginning solo in one of the tracks. Other than that, I don't think there is anything, but I would appreciate more, and it is there, so you can appreciate the little bits. The bass player has his solos. The bass player, you can hear him in each track stand out, and he sounds really technical, like he really is great at the bass. He's not a lame bass player, he is really good. The vocalist has range to her and sounds really good. So next, now let's focus on the issues. And the issues is basically the way they probably structure this album. The thing is, every track sounds huge. Like, the tracks don't really have a typical, you know, let's do the intro, let's now do the verse, chorus, solo, finish. Their verses in tracks, there's like a multitude of them. They have bridge sections, they have a multitude of bridge sections. Choruses can kind of shift. The songs are very long, they can be like 8 minutes, plus adding on the instrumentals that sometimes come before. And then, as I say, some tracks, it's like 6 minutes, and then it just goes immediately into another track of 3 minutes, and therefore it just seems humongous. So the tracks are very complicated. You can listen to this album a lot of times, and it's not going to get boring, and you're not going to understand it, because there's a lot going on. It'll take a lot of listens to really get used to this bloody album. I've listened to it a lot. I still don't really understand it. I've got the first half down, the second half I'm still clueless because I keep forgetting. Because there's so much to digest, because so fucking much goes on. There is so much musicianship, so many leads, so much going on with the bass, then the vocalist. The songs keep blending together, so it's very difficult to separate them. And there's your bloody issue. I like tracks being long and complicated, where it takes a lot of thought, and there is a lot to it. But the issue is, it's an album that is basically all connected. You do get the few tracks which disconnect, which is great because then you actually get a bloody pause. But when you get a track that flows into another track that then flows into a track that then flows into a track, and sometimes it's quite hard to tell. Sometimes it's easy, but it means you never get a pause, you never get a break. And then when a track completely changes into another track and it's difficult for you to know, it means that the tracks can sound quite similar because it has to flow in. Therefore it's going to be in the same kind of tone, the same kind of key. It's not going to really be an easy shift, is it? So it gets quite draining keeping up sometimes. Because if you listen to it the first time, it's so complicated, and the songs just never seem to end, which then starts really draining on you. The more you get used to it, you do kind of appreciate this more. But nevertheless, I do think they overdid it. It's so much. They needed to have a few more breaks because the songs are so connected. And some of them, as I say, because they're connected, they don't shift in sound a lot, which is, you know, another problem. Some of these songs are quite similar. It would be nice to get more melody. As I said, you only get like the 1 or 2 tracks that are melody, and then the rest is very heavy. The guitarist is very shred orientated instead of melodic. They are very old school sounding, which then gives you a bit of, you know, I've heard this kind of before, even though the band has some unique elements to them. So these are their faults. As I say, the album's over an hour. It's very complex. There is a lot there. There's so much musicianship from bass to guitar. The vocalist has a great range to her. She's doesn't sound like the typical female vocals you get in metal these days. There is variety on the album, but again, as I say, it's old school from what you've heard previously. The guitarist is very kind of one-minded, where it's very technical stuff. He's no Herman Lee, it's not like that, but he needs to do more melody. He really needs to slow down and just hold on these notes and take these little breaks just so you can digest something. And then the music needs to be more varied as well, with a bit more melody instead of it always being so aggressive. And then it needs to be a bit more pauses, just because the songs never break and it gets really tiresome, and it's really complicated to follow. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, rating this album, it's still a great album, which I would give an 8.5 to. The musicianship is on point, the vocalist is great, you got catchy stuff, you are completely pleased with the solos, even though you will want maybe more in the way of melody. It has a lot of listenability, like you get your money's worth. It's not basically you listen to this, you get used to it, and then you get bored of it and you move on. This takes a lot of listens because there's so much, you can't remember it all. So when you keep coming back to it, you will always hear something new because you will forget it. So every time you come back to this album, you are still hearing it to an extent for the first time because you forget. It takes a lot of listens. There is great musicianship. The album's long, the tracks are lengthy, the solos are there, you get the bass leads, there is a lot to it. As I say, the only fault for it not being the 9 and the 10s or the 9.5 or anything is, as I said, you need more melody from the guitarist, you need more melodic songs. The songs are so stuck together that they become really, really big and hard to separate, and therefore the songs can sound quite similar. There is a lot of ties to old school sounds, so it would be nice for them to still develop a bit more of their own unique sound. But other than that, it's a great album, and I think anyone could really probably appreciate this album. I don't think you could, anyone would listen to this and go, this is crap. So I recommend this album. It is a really good album, it has a few flaws, but overall it is a great album.